Good morning, everyone. So at the moment, your microphones are muted. So we'll just say good morning at this point. My name's Jo Keedon. I'm a Vice Principal, and Sarah Hollingsworth here, who's the Assistant Principal for Foundation Stage. So we'll just give you a couple of minutes for everybody to enter, and then we'll start with our presentations. Apologies that you're all muted. If you do have something that you would like to ask already, please put it into the chat function. It's just because for noise interference, because there's so many of us on the call, we've muted at this point. But lovely to see all of you, and welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Finally.
We can hear you. Welcome. Yeah, we have muted microphones just to ensure that the noise interference in the backgrounds. But welcome to everybody.
Hello, good morning. Welcome everyone to our Zoom session today. It's a pleasure to have you here on this session, and I'm really looking forward to sharing this presentation with you today and how we are going to reopen our school in September, ready for our students to learn. I'd like to start by introducing myself. My name's Sarah Hollingworth, and I'll be the Assistant Principal for the Foundation Stage. And today I'll be joined by Jo Keedon, who is our Vice Principal. Jo will be responding to any questions that you have on the chat function. So we request that microphones are muted during this conversation. However, if you do have a question, you can put this on the chat function and Jo will be responding to those questions that you have. So over the summer, we have been working hard closely with the KHDA, GEMS Corporate and our leadership team to ensure we have a plan to safely integrate our students back to WSL. KHDA have agreed our plans, and we are looking forward to sharing our updates with you today. And we really hope that you feel reassured that every decision has been made and researched, discussed and improved to ensure the safety of our WSO community. On our screen today, you can see photographs of our leadership team. Members of our leadership team over the coming weeks and throughout your child's journey at WSO will be communicating with you today. And as I have introduced with you already, we have Jo and myself who will be in the Zoom session. In the Foundation Stage, we will also have Amy McLennan, who will be our Head of Year. During this session, we will discuss the following. We will have the planning and the process for reopening, parent communication and how this will be delivered to you. We will go through the safety precautions and procedures, the drop-off, pick-up, and in-class and bus safety precautions. I will then go through the year group specific logistics and details and discuss the curriculum provision we will have in the Foundation Stage. Jo Keedon will then go through the procedures established for any child showing symptoms of COVID or confirmed cases. And we will be also answering frequently asked questions. I understand that some of you have already submitted some questions, so thank you to those parents who have shared them on the sign-up form. All of these questions have been included within this presentation unless they were specific to one child. And like I previously mentioned, if you have any questions throughout the session, please do ask the questions on the chat function, and one of our members of leadership team will answer them, or we'll get back to you individually after the session. As I've mentioned before, we've disabled the microphones to avoid noise interference, but please feel free to question on the chat function. So our planning progress. We were very eager to share our plans with you, but we really needed to wait until all of our plans were approved by the KHDA. We now have a timeline in place to share as much information as possible with our community. So thank you for your patience. First, KHDA released a reopening policy to guide schools. Once this was opened together as a leadership team, we then devised our reopening plan, and all schools submitted this to the KHDA for approval. We then received approval from the KHDA and discussed with our leadership team, and then we could confirm and contact parents and share this with you. and you would have had this communication in the form of a letter from our principal, Nathan Sadler. Following the letter, we are now in our Zoom session where we can meet with parents to go through how we will reopen our school for our foundation stage students and answer any questions. Over the next few days, there will be a welcome back video to show students how they will return to school. Our staff have also been working tirelessly to prepare a COVID handbook to further explain the process and the procedures. And then finally, we will be so excited to have our Meet the Teacher session, and students will be offered a face-to-face or remote meeting with their class teacher before starting school. I'm just going to pause the session now and just want to check that our chat function is working. Excellent. I can see that. It's brilliant. Oh, I'm just trying to change the slide. It just seems to have frozen for a moment. Do bear with me. Thank you. So, the important question, how are we going to keep our students safe in school? As mentioned, we have worked very closely with the KHDA GEMS corporate and followed international best practice to ensure the safety of our community during this time. When your child is dropped off at school, there will be 2 thermal cameras at the entrances and they will need to pass one. This thermal camera will take the temperature of your child and yourself, and no entry for anyone with a temperature of 37.5 degrees or above. We will have staggered start times in the school to decrease the number of students entering at one time. There will also be a one-way system to avoid people passing each other in the corridors. 2-meter markers on the corridors will be placed to remind the WSO community to social distance. Masks are mandatory for anyone 6 years and above. Masks will be optional for children below 6 years. Our foundation stage students will be dropped by 1 adult. The maximum time in school to drop off is 10 minutes. However, our advice is that students are dropped at the door efficiently and quickly to avoid gatherings in the corridor. Classroom doors will always be open, so you drop your child at the door and then continue to exit. Year 3 and above will walk to their classroom independently with the support of a staff member. Sanitizing stations have been placed on all corridors and within classrooms. When your students are in the classroom, they will be divided into smaller groups to support social distancing, and we will call them bubbles. Students will keep a safe distance of 1.5 meters between themselves and other students. Students will be reminded regularly and supported to wash hands and sanitize their hands. And within the foundation stage, this will be a big focus in our first few weeks as we support children with their hygiene and washing hands and social distancing rules. Foundation stage students will use the in-class toilet, which will be cleaned and sanitized after every use. Children in year 1 to 6 will use the corridor toilets, and each toilet will be cleaned after every use. As previously mentioned, teachers and students who are 6 years and above will wear masks at all times, unless there is a medical reason to prevent this or they are doing strenuous exercise. I'd like to mention here, if you would like your child to wear a mask and they are under 6 years in the foundation stage, it is your choice for them to wear the mask. However, this will not be mandatory. Classrooms will have a deep clean and be sterilised every day, and toys and resources will be cleaned and sterilised after every use. In the foundation stage, students will have their own pack of resources, which they won't share with other students. And in all of our classrooms, materials and textiles have been removed. For example, cushions, sand trays, and carpets. Everything in the classroom and all touch points will be able to be cleaned and sanitized regularly. Students will have their lunch in the classroom at a designated table, maintaining a distance of 1.5 meters. Students will stay within their classroom and only move to go to PE, where they will maintain a 1.5 metre distance, therefore not taking part in any contact sports. On PE days, students should come to school wearing their PE kits. And once the weather is cooler, we will allocate outside break times. However, students will stay within their bubble during these times. Our pickup procedure is the same as drop-off procedure. Therefore, we will ask parents and only one adult to come into the school following our one-way system and collect the child from the door and then continue to walk and follow the one-way system. And this will avoid any social gatherings and keep the safe distance in place. We will be putting a strict stay-at-home policy if unwell. Parents are asked to check their child's temperature before bringing them to school if they suspect that they feel unwell. And any student showing any symptoms will be taken to the clinic, and more information is to follow on this later. Bus safety. Our STS bus service will operate at half capacity and place seating markers on chairs to accurately guide children where to sit. Signs will be strategically placed around the bus, guiding your child towards respiratory hygiene and waste management practices when on the bus. Your child will require a temperature check before they board the bus, and their temperature will be recorded and then taken again as they enter the school. If your child has a temperature of above 37.5 degrees, they will be not permitted to board the bus. High standards of bus hygiene will be apparent at all times. Before your child enters the bus, all seats, seat belts, armrests, handles and rails will be sanitised, and this process will be repeated once the child departs the bus. And this is in accordance with the strict guidelines from the RTA. Additionally, the swipe machine used to register children will be disinfected after each use. For the foundation stage and in FS1, we would recommend that the children in the first 4 weeks and month are dropped off by an adult before starting taking the bus. However, you might have a sibling in school and this might be a requirement, and we would support your child on getting the bus if you wish to request this. I'm now going to talk about specific information related to FS1. So due to the limitations of bubble sizes, we do not have the capacity to have all of our students 100% face-to-face. Therefore, we have prioritised FS1 to Year 2, and this was based on parent and teacher feedback that these students needed more support with remote learning. Year 3 and above will access their learning through a blended approach, 50% in school and 50% at home. I'm really delighted to say today that students will have the option to be in school every day for the whole school day. We've capped our class sizes at 20 students, with each class having a teacher and a teaching assistant. Students in the class will be split into 2 learning stable groups, and we will call these bubbles. The maximum number of children within that bubble is 10. Therefore, they will be interacting with fewer students in the school day. Within the classroom, social distancing of 1.5 metres will be followed, and students will continue to have a full foundation stage curriculum experience with special lessons including performing arts, outdoor learning, PE, Arabic and Islamic. So how will this look? Our children will be in 2 bubbles. We'll have bubble 1, the blue bubble, and bubble 2, the yellow bubble. And 10 children will be placed in each of these bubbles. The children will be at desks that are 1.5 metres apart. However, we do understand, especially for our younger learners, there may be incidents where they come into closer contact with the class teacher or another child. And really in those initial few weeks of learning, it will be ensuring that children understand these safety rules and follow strict hygiene routines. Our class teacher and teaching assistant will rotate between both classrooms. The class teacher will plan and deliver all of the lessons, and the TA will support with the supervision and support of children where needed. All of our teaching assistants will have thorough training before we return to the academy, ensuring that they are providing outstanding care and support to your child. Specialist teachers will come to the class to deliver the lessons and keep a 1.5 distance from the children. I am delighted to be leading an outstanding team of teachers in the foundation stage, and we have an outstanding curriculum. Our priority in the first few weeks of school will be to support our students with the transition back into school. Our well-being and happiness of the children will be at the forefront of their minds. We will be working on developing their personal, social and emotional skills, and our teachers and our pastoral team will be working hard to provide this for our students. Students will have access to a full foundation stage curriculum, including specialist lessons. They will not have to go to a different classroom for the specialist lessons, PE being the only exception where they will be moved to a larger space. And be reassured, within that space in PE, there'll be no contact sports, and also they will be given their designated spot to have their PE lesson. We will continue to use Target Tracker to assess your child and determine any next steps for their learning as within previous years. School timings and sibling provisions. The school timing for FS1 will be 7:45 to 8:15 for drop-off. This is staggered from the rest of the year groups within the school. Between 7:45 and 8:15, you will also be given an allocated time to stagger this even further, and this information will be shared to you closer to our opening. The pickup time will be 12:15 till 12:45, and like with our drop-off time, you will be given an allocated time within that half an hour space to pick up your child. If you have a sibling in school, all teachers will be ready to welcome students from 7:20 a.m. and siblings will be allowed to access their classroom this time to support with parent drop-off. If your child has an older sibling in school, they can stay with their class teacher or teaching assistant until 1:50, and this will be provision only for students with siblings. If your children are in a different house and you would like them to be in the same house, please get in touch with me and I'll be able to make arrangements so they are in the same house where possible. I'm now going to hand over to Jo Keedon, who is going to go over the COVID procedures if any symptoms are displayed whilst your child is at school.
Hello, good morning everyone. Sorry, my fingers are on fire here answering the questions on the chat. So I hope I've managed to answer many of the questions on there. I am going to just take a break from answering the questions, but while I go through these next sections. But obviously once I have finished talking and it hands back to Sarah, then I will go back and look at your questions because obviously these are really vital questions and I'm glad we've got this opportunity to answer them for you. Okay, so my name's Jo Keedon. I'm a vice principal at the academy, and my real passion is the foundation stage. So I'm really excited to have the children back in September, and I'm really excited to have you all here today to be talking through all of the things that we're putting in place for this very unique year. So obviously the big questions people are going to have is COVID and how are we going to deal with putting all these precautions in place to try and minimize the risk of COVID and make sure that our children's safety, health and happiness is at the forefront of our minds. But we also do have to be realistic and talk through what procedures we do have in place in case a COVID case does come about. So that's what I'm going to talk through now. What I would say is there is a lot of information, and this is going to be the first time you're hearing all of these procedures. So please be assured after this, we'll send more information for you to digest, speak through with your partner and discuss. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to get in contact with us. So Ms. Hollingworth mentioned earlier about the if unwell, please stay home. And we really can't reiterate that enough to families in this situation. Previously, if your child possibly had a runny nose or had a cough, but you knew that they just had a cold, you might send them into school. We are going to have to be very strict that any symptom is going to be referred to the clinic. So therefore we are requesting parents for us all to work together. And if you think that your child isn't 100%, does have a runny nose, does have a cough, any of these things, then they shouldn't be brought into school, or does have a temperature. The class teacher will be responsible if a child does come into the school and they've got through that they haven't registered as having a temperature on the thermal scanner. then it will be the class teacher's responsibility then to be then supervising, looking at the children to see whether any of these symptoms. The guidance that we have been given is that symptoms that we need to be looking for are cough, body aches, fatigue, shortness of breath, sore throat, runny nose, diarrhea and nausea, and a headache. So if we notice any of these things within a child, we will then be getting in contact with the clinic, explaining to them, and then they will then tell us when to bring the child. Now, at that point, the child will be socially distanced from the other children in the class. Another adult will then take the child, will make them feel at ease. We're obviously not going to make a big thing of it because we want to try and relax the children as much as possible. We'll take them to the clinic, and at that point, you will be then notified as the parent, and you'll be asked to come and collect the children, and you'll have 30 minutes to do that. Now, obviously, I have a child myself. I know that runny noses do happen, and that's where we do have the possibility that if you do feel that your child shouldn't come into school that day because they do have a runny nose, you will be able to revert back to remote learning. So there is that option. So that's where we do really say about the fact that if your child is unwell, please don't send them in, because any of these symptoms, we will have to refer them straight away to the clinic. Once they're at the clinic, you'll obviously, as a parent, you'll be notified, and they will be isolated. We have isolation rooms within the school. There will be a nurse in there with them, though, so they won't be completely isolated, and we will be making them feel at ease as much as possible. And again, that's why we've got the shorter time for you to come and pick them up, so the child can be picked up and taken home. Through the guidance that we have been given, again, the government guidance is that if a child is not collected in that 30 minutes, then we have to call an ambulance at that point. Okay, and I know that that does seem extreme, but we're following the government guidance, and that's what we have to follow. So I just want to make parents all aware of that we have a requirement to be referring these symptoms, and this is what would take place if that did happen. Okay. Sarah, I think I might need you to move on to the next slide. Thank you. So what happens, so you've been called, your child has a fever, for example, and you've come and collected them in the 30 minutes and you take them home. Again, through government guidance, it's then for you to then contact your doctor, and there will need to be a COVID test at that point before the child can return back to school. If your child has, and again, during that time when they're not going to be able to be in school, we will provide remote learning for them so they're not missing out on anything. Once you have the test, if it comes back negative and your child has no other symptoms, so that's the second point in that, if it comes back negative, your child doesn't have any other symptoms, then you can absolutely come back to school. But we need to have that negative result and the evidence of that before we can obviously let the child back into the class. The slight difference with that is if it is negative, but your child still has symptoms, for example, still has a high fever, still has a cough, then they do need to do the 14-day quarantine. Their class won't need to do the 14-day quarantine because the test was negative, but that your child will need to do a 14-day quarantine. But again, the remote learning will be there for the child. If the result is positive and your child does have COVID-19, what we would then do is you would obviously notify the school. We then have a tracking process, which again is the government guidance, in terms of who may have been exposed to this child. It's still within the 1.5 meters, obviously, but then whoever could have been in contact with this child would then have a 14-day quarantine. So for example, if your child's in FS1A and a child in that class has been tested as positive, then that class for 14 days would then back to remote learning. After the 14 days would come back in. Okay. If you're on that 14-day quarantine and your child then does get COVID, then obviously you would be notifying the school as well. It'll be as much contact between parents and the school as much as possible. Now, obviously, we're putting every precaution in place to try and avoid this happening, but as I said at the beginning, we do want to be really open and honest with parents to explain the guidance that we've been given by the government. Okay, the next slide is just some questions here, which I absolutely understand you would have. My child's class are having to quarantine for 14 days. How will they access the learning? So you would still have the same class teacher, and what we would do is, if many of you may be new parents, obviously in term 3, we had remote learning for term 3, so we know exactly how it runs. The teacher would revert right back to that from day one. We will make sure that all parents and children are set up on Seesaw so that we can very quickly revert back to remote learning if needed. Again, we're really hoping that that wouldn't happen, but we will have everything set up if that does need to happen. My child has to quarantine for 14 days, but their classmates don't need to. So the 2 reasons that would happen is, for example, if your child had a negative COVID test but still had symptoms, then that would be your child would be quarantined. So they would get the remote learning, but their classmates wouldn't. Again, we will provide that remote learning for them, and then they can come back to school after the 14 days. Or it could be that somebody in your household, so for example, if you have a nanny, for example, it's in your household and your nanny test is positive, then obviously your child would then have to do a 14-day quarantine. So again, we would provide the remote learning so that they didn't miss out on any of their learning there. I've just put this here, all staff are being trained, so all of our staff are being trained in terms of all of this information, how to deal with these situations, what to be looking for. But additional to that, we also have designated health and safety staff members who have been going to the ministry, going to different authority boards within the government to really understand the tracing process. And in any situation of emergency, they would be the ones that would guide us with this. And all of this information has come directly from the government, and this is the guidance that we've been given. As I said at the beginning, it's a lot of information, and please be assured this will be taught to you many, many times, explained to you. We're going to send a handbook with the protocols and procedures, and as I say, I really think that everything that we're setting in place, we really want to avoid these situations, but at the same time, we want to be one step ahead in case we do need to revert back to quarantine and the remote learning. Okay, so the next slide moves on to frequently asked questions. So I think somebody actually asked this before. If you decide that you would like your child to have 100% remote learning, so there was in Mr. Sadler, our principal's letter, there was an option to click if you would actually like your child to have 100% remote learning. And Sarah Hollingworth will have been in touch with you if you did click that to just discuss that through. As I said, we are going to be set up so that if we do have to revert back to remote learning at any point, then we absolutely can. We use the same platforms that we used last time, which was Seesaw. So if that is something that you're interested in, or if you actually would prefer to have 100% remote learning, then please do, at the end of this presentation, Sarah's email will be there. Please contact Sarah. And again, if you're starting school and then you actually for some reason decide for family reasons you would like to revert back to 100% remote learning, we will have that two-way conversation all the time. We'll be supporting families for whichever decision you decide to make. At the same time, what I would say is for FS1 students, being able to be, I know they're still going to be socially distanced, but they are going to have that chance to have more interaction, to develop their communication and language, their personal, social, emotional development, which is so crucial for children at that age in a classroom environment. Somebody asked this at the beginning, so if you, in terms of class allocation and house allocation, we are working on that at the moment, and actually we should be able to inform you at the end of this week which class your child is in and which house they're in, okay? And because the older year groups are doing alternate days, FS1 are in full-time, but the older children are doing alternate days, if for some reason you have a sibling and the house allocation causes a problem for your family because of different days, please do get in contact with us, and we will try everything we can to try and minimize any concerns or issues you have. If it means if we have space, then we will absolutely move your children forward. So anything like that, please don't hesitate to contact us. A couple of people on the questionnaire asked this question, so especially FS1, my child is under 6 years, but I want them to wear a mask. Again, the guidance from the KHDA and the Ministry of Education at present is that it's only 6 years and above that need to be wearing masks. If you decide that you would like your child to wear a mask, if that's going to make you more comfortable, or if your child would like to wear a mask, absolutely. If you provide your child with a mask and you want them to wear it, you can have that discussion. You can email your teacher and let them know. That's a decision that you can make. But one thing I would add to that, though, is obviously we can't make it mandatory for all children. Okay, so it would just be your child. You can't ask for the whole class to do it because it's actually the guidance is 6 and above. But if you would feel more comfortable with your own child, please don't hesitate to get in contact with us, and we can arrange that for you. Okay, next slide, sorry, sir. Again, another, obviously we're all watching the news, we're all seeing different things. There's the question mark over, is there going to be another spike in these COVID numbers? Is the nation going to be put back into a lockdown? Just want to reassure you on that. As I've mentioned before, we are going to be absolutely set up on Seesaw. We're going to have, what we've learned. We had our, we actually got the highest grading from the KHDA in terms of our remote learning for term 3 last year. We are more than ready to move back to remote learning if it has to happen. Obviously, we really hope it doesn't happen, but if it does, I just want to reassure you all that we will absolutely be able to step back into that confidently. But again, we hope that doesn't happen. Another great question somebody asked was, will students realistically in FS1 keep a 1.5 metre distance? Completely understand this, and I think it would be wrong of me to say that it would be natural for children to keep a 1.5 metre distance. I have a child, I've worked in FS, I know what children are like, so I'm not going to say to you that this is going to be particularly easy for children, but what I am going to say to you is your youngest children are like sponges, and they take things in very quickly, they adapt very quickly, and I actually think they'll adapt much quicker than we will. Okay, so we will do everything we can to support the children in achieving this. We'll be talking to them, we'll be teaching them, we'll be modelling to them, and also the setup of our rooms will ensure that they do keep that 1.5 metre distance. Okay, so the way the rooms are going to be set out will ensure that. So we do believe they will adapt quickly, and we will also be supporting them through this process. So the teacher and the teaching assistant will be reminding them, we'll be making games out of it, we'll be making it as fun as possible for them. And I truly believe that they will very quickly adapt to understanding the need to do that. Will there be big group events in school? So at WSO, if you have siblings in the school, or if you're aware of the school, you follow us on social media, you will know that we usually have amazing house assemblies in our auditorium. We have fantastic theatre productions. Obviously, this is very sad that we can't have these events. However, they will resume at some point, and that's what we have to keep thinking, is that we're going to get through this as a community. Things are going to be different, and some things we can't do for the safety of our students. However, when it does happen again, which it will, we're positive that one day this will resume, it'll be such an exciting and happy time for everybody. But the answer to that is no, we won't be doing big group events. The health and safety of the children will come first. But as soon as the government, as soon as the health authorities believe that it's safe again, then obviously we will resume those again. But the priority has to be the safety of and the health of our students. Okay, so okay, yeah. So this is obviously usually an FS1 question more than an all years question. But obviously, what if my child saws themselves? So if your child does have an accident, if they poo themselves or if they wee themselves. And I, again, completely understand why this comes up as a question. The expectation when your child starts FS1 is that they can toilet independently. But we understand that accidents do happen, okay? We absolutely understand that. But during this time, it's obviously slightly different. We're thinking about that social distancing. So I just wanted to talk you through and to reassure you of this. If your child does have an accident, if they soil themselves or if they pee themselves, what we will do is make sure that there is another adult. For safeguarding reasons, we make sure there is another adult to support. So one adult will be in full PPE gear, including gloves and an apron, whilst trying to abide the social distancing guidelines where possible, but we will have that protective gear on. The teacher will assist your child to change and clean themselves, and we'll try and do it as much through visual and verbal prompts, which is actually what we did pre-COVID as well. So we know that that does work, but we will also take that extra step just to have the PPE wear as well, so that so we're keeping the social distance, but we're also supporting the safety of ourselves and for the child. We do ask that your child does have a spare pair of clothes in the bag in case this does happen. If your child, in accordance with our school policy, if your child has just weed themselves, then they can continue, they'll have changed the clothes, we will bag up and remove their wet clothes. If, however, they have pooed themselves, then what we do is ring parents and ask them to come and collect the child, okay? The only difference, the slight difference if you've had siblings, is that previously we would have sent your child to the clinic and then they would have been collected there. Due to the fact we're using the clinic more for COVID-related things, the teacher will just call you, you'll come to reception and we'll take your child to you at reception, and then you'll leave that way, okay? Just for, if it's not your child that sold yourself, but another child has, just for awareness, obviously after the incident, the area and toilet will be cleaned and sanitized, and the teacher will also change their clothes and PPE. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Before I go to this question, I'm just going to ask, I think it was Rania's question regarding introduction. There will be a lot more information coming about how we induct our children into FS1. Like previous years, we don't just have all the children in FS1 come in on the first day, because it would just be too overwhelming for them. Some children do struggle to remove themselves from their parent. So what we've done, and we've tried to make it even more personal for our students this year, and we will send you information about this, but there is going to be a longer induction which will go over 2 weeks. But the start date is actually the same as previous years, and we will be involving yourselves in that as well, because the teachers want to get to know you and want to get to know the child as well, and that will hopefully help with the separation as well. So basically it will begin actually with a much smaller group, but the parent being there, social distancing, be able to get to know the teacher, show the children the space with a much smaller group. Gradually we might build up to 4 children being in at the same time, then 6 children, then 10 children. This will come from Miss Hollingworth, but just be assured that we have a plan in place to induct your children in a way that's going to make them feel safe, it's going to make them feel comfortable, and all of this information will come to you. Obviously during that time, because it's shorter hours, the bus service won't be available. The bus service, if you do want your child on the bus for FS1, it's the 13th of September that will start. And yes, Sarah, I'm just wondering, Sarah, do you want to do this part so I can answer some questions? And then, perfect. All right, I'm going to go back to typing, but thank you very much for your time.
So this question is about what your child should bring to school. So your child will need to bring a rucksack or a backpack that can be placed on their back and easily carried. So no wheelie or trolley bags will be allowed in school, and this is from our health and safety government guidance. They will need to bring in a morning snack and lunch and enough water for the school day. So we recommend that each child brings in 2 bottles in their bag. A change of clothes will need to be bought in a plastic bag, and these should be left in their designated locker and only used if there was a toilet accident, as Joe has previously gone through and discussed about the procedure. So I really want to thank you for your time today, and I hope this session has made you feel reassured and that we really have put your child's health and well-being at the forefront of our minds during this time. As mentioned, we really want to keep open lines of communication through myself and you to ensure that you know all the steps that we are putting in place to ensure your child feels safe and happy at school. Over the next few weeks, we will be sharing the school handbook, which will put more COVID guidelines in, and we will also have our Meet the Teacher session. Also on our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, we will be updating parents through our next steps and procedures for opening. Please feel free to reach out using my email address that is on the screen here at any time of any question or concern or query that you have. And over email, I'm more than happy to reply, or I can do a telephone call or a Zoom session to answer any questions that you have. We really are looking forward to welcoming you and your child back into the Academy in September. Thank you for your time today. And I can see that Joe is responding to the questions on the chat function. But if any of your questions have not been answered today, please do get in touch and we will aim to answer these questions for you.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking there's a couple of questions that I can answer just verbally now if we're running out of time. So there's talk about it for the introduction period, about if you are a working parent and you're going to struggle with that time. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I think it is really important it's essential really for the children's to be able to settle an induction period happens every single year. So what I would suggest is that you contact Ms. Hollingworth separately and see how we can support you with that if you are in that situation. Somebody else has also asked about extended hours for FS1. So our hours for FS1 pre-COVID was 7:30 to 12:30. So they're obviously the same as they were. As mentioned, if you have a sibling in the school, then there is that extension of time to the next time slot, which I believe is 1:50. Ms. Hollingworth, that's right, isn't it?
Yeah, 1:50.
Yeah. So that's if you have an older sibling. The hours wouldn't be extended further than that, because again, it's FS1, and that's kind of the guidance that we've been given to give for FS1 children. However, again, if that's causing a problem for your family, or if you want to discuss, then obviously we've dealt with lots of different families, and we can support with you knowing other childcare facilities that are available and things like that. So please do contact us if you want to discuss that. I'll just check. Change of clothes should be uniform, or they should be any other clothes. So Ronnie's just asked, for example, if you have put an extra spare pair of clothes in, that doesn't need to be uniform. That can be just a different pair of clothes. So you could just have, but just make sure obviously the underwear is included in that, because underwear would be the most damaged if they have weed or soiled themselves. Gary, for FS1, school finish at 12:30. What should we do to put in the lunchbox? Do they need to bring their own crayons, etc.? So just for everyone's awareness, and thank you, Gary, that's a great question. Food-wise, the children will have a snack time, and then they will have a lunch time. Okay, so my suggestion would be that snack, we usually suggest like apple, carrot sticks, cucumber, whatever it is that your child likes. We do, as a school, we do try and suggest a healthy lunchbox. But again, if you know that your child is a picky eater and that this is especially what they like, sandwiches, things like that, then please do just let the class teacher know, and we'll support you with that. For lunch, again, different people would like different things, but again, sandwich, some pasta, whatever it is. The one thing I would say that it does need to be something that doesn't need to be reheated, obviously. So something that the child can access easily, and that they can access on their own easily as well. Do they need to bring their own crayons? So we are going to be providing the children with their own packs that are their packs of things like crayons and things like that, which will be sterilised as well. But then they'll be the only ones using that, so you don't need to worry about that. Again, information will go to you about that. Okay, I've had a few questions sent to me privately as well, so I'm just going to ask. So in terms of the PCR test, is it mandatory before people come back? We'll get in touch with you. As I mentioned previously, that's not been confirmed for the Dubai Emirate. However, as soon as we get information about that, we will let you know. If a child becomes ill, even if it's not COVID, will the rest of the class be informed? Again, in terms of guidance on that, if it's a COVID case, then absolutely the class will be informed, because they'll go into quarantine. If it's not a COVID case and the child's taken all the necessary things, we've been in communication with the doctor, then obviously there would be no need for us to communicate that with the families. However, what we would say is, again, it's just about that. If you do think your child's unwell, then my strong suggestion, plea, is that they don't come to school and you rely on remote learning for that day. Will FS1 students have PE? Yes, so they'll have the same specialist lessons that they previously would have had. The only difference is, for example, outdoor learning. They used to go to the outdoor learning area. This time the outdoor learning specialist will come and provide that provision in their space, again, keeping a social distance. PE is the only exception where the children will move to a space, and again, social distance, there'll be no contact sports, and they will have that time to have PE, but that's the only time they will actually be moved into a different space, and obviously the area that they go to will be sanitized and cleaned in between different classes going there. In terms of if you're concerned about your child being able to go to the toilet independently, again, this happens pre-COVID and post-COVID. So just again, it's that communication with the teacher, just to explain that. Again, it would be about us trying as much as possible to have that social distance, to use visual and verbal cues to support the child to be able to do it. And if necessary that we need to have contact, then it would be going back to having the PPE, the protective clothing, to make sure that we could support them. But then again, we'd take those safety measures afterwards. Yeah. Yeah, and a very good question. You know, these children sometimes need to be reassured, they need to be felt safe. Please be assured our teachers are, and you'll see this as soon as you come in, our teachers are so warm, so friendly. They will make, even if they can't be as close as they normally would be to the students, they'll be getting down to the child's level, they'll be showing visuals, supporting the child, making the classrooms really inviting for the children. And again, obviously, if a child is in distress for something, we will then take that precautionary measures again to support the child, to keep the protection, but also the biggest thing is their health and well-being and safety. So we will take those steps to ensure that your child is supported. And if for some reason your child is very upset about something, pre-COVID, post-COVID, we would always inform the parent and ask them to come in if we thought that the child wasn't settling. So just please be reassured by that. Can we confirm the 13th of September as a start date for FS1? So the induction will start prior to that. The induction will actually start on the 2nd of September. However, those will be for a smaller number of students as we move through. But by the 13th of September, all students will be in together. Yeah, but again, we'll get that communication to you ASAP. Yeah, if it will close for online, how can we working on support? Again, this is what we obviously had in term 3 as well. So we do, as teachers, we try to provide activities that the children can do as much as possible independently. But we can also, and we also involve parent engagement sessions to support parents to help them at home. So please be assured that it won't just be a case of you're at home, you know, that's how you get on. The teacher will be supporting you through that process. And as I mentioned, in term 3, we did this, and we did actually get the highest rating for our remote learning. So we can do it successfully. And I understand it is much more challenging for working parents, and we completely appreciate that. And we'll put things into place to support you with that. Is it possible for a nanny? Yes. In terms of who that one adult can be, the guidance is just that it needs to be one adult dropping and picking up the child. And obviously that's, again, it's not as trying to be difficult, it's for the, you know, to minimize the number of people that are coming in. So that, yeah, it can be your nanny, it could be yourself, it could be your wife, your husband, whoever it is. But the only thing we would ask is, obviously, if it is a nanny that we've never met before, we would then obviously contact the parent to make sure that this is the nanny, and that's the same pre and post COVID. So when we get to know you as a family in those first induction days, we will be asking who will be dropping off your son, who will be picking up your son, and if obviously somebody different arrives one day, we were not going to give your child to that person. We're going to call you and make sure that that's correct. So just reassurance, but that's the same pre and post COVID. Okay, I think I've answered the questions there, but as mentioned, there's going to be so much more information coming to you. There's going to be a full handbook with all of this information, and Sarah, myself, we're all here to answer questions if you have any. Okay, so Sarah, I'll hand back to you to close, but thank you for your time today.
Yeah, just to say again, we are here to support you through this time. And if you do have any questions, hopefully we've answered some of your questions today, but please do get in touch and we'll be happy to answer your questions and support you through this. We will be sharing this recording and slides for any parents that have missed the session today, or if you would like to share them with your partner or family after the session. So this will also be shared with you. And then again, lots of communication to follow about our reopening as well. Thank you for your time.